Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Manish Jain or Mr. Jain, and you are watching Electric Avenue. This is episode number 22, and this is the September 2024 wrap up. So if you're looking for all of the EV news in September in India, this is the place to be. And I should actually just rename this episode the JSW MG episode because everything I'm going to talk about really is about the JSW MG new launch, and that is their new MG Windsor. But before we get to it, as I always do, there are 4 areas we're going to cover. We're going to cover the monthly registration numbers. New thing I'm going to introduce is that there's a new EV index that's come out, and so that tracks the new energy market of India. So I'm going to start tracking that on a monthly basis, see where that is on a month-to-month basis. Second, we're going to do the recent EV news and launches, which does include the JSW MG Windsor. Number 3, we're going to do the usual car spotting, and luckily I was able to find that JSW MG Windsor on the road in Bombay, so it's kind of cool to see it. It does look very nice on the road. And last but not least, we're going to do a deep dive into the overall JSW MG battery as a service strategy. So if you've never heard of battery as a service, you'll learn about it very soon, and you'll kind of get an understanding of what I think is the MG and JSW strategy of getting into the new energy and EV market here in India. So that's kind of what we're going to do for September 2024. And as usual, we're going to dive right into the numbers. So let's go. All right, so here we go. We are going to look at the EV sales numbers, and here I've got the last 6 months. So basically the first half of the financial year, 2024-2025. And actually very surprising right off the bat is you can see there's actually a pretty big dip over the last 3 months. You know, we were at 7,500 units, we dropped down to 63, and now we're at around 5,700 units. Little surprising, which is, I'm not sure why, because there are actually a lot of new cars coming into the market. Maybe people knew that these cars were coming, so they kind of waited to kind of take a look at it, because the truth is, the market leader, Tata Motors, has really come down in sales, and maybe, you know, people put the brakes on buying the Nexon and looking what else is out there. So that could be it. But even MG Motors kind of came down from 1,300 units to 955 and along down. Before I go any further, I definitely want to thank, Autocar India, EV Reporter, Vahan, Fada, the OEMs, and of course our good old friend Elon with creating with all the data that I get from Twitter from time to time. So that's kind of where all of the data comes from. The truth is, these are registration numbers, not really sales, so it's kind of deceptive, but I think they're pretty highly correlated. But anyways, let's get back to the September 24 numbers. As you go down the list, you can kind of see, Mercedes, kind of bumped up from 48 units to 75 units. Hyundai went from 39 to 26, which is really surprising because I really thought the Ioniq 5 was doing well, but I really feel I've been seeing a lot of press around, Hyundai's EV strategy and a lot of talk of the new Creta EV coming out. So I think people are probably pumping the brakes saying, you know what, let's wait for the Creta EV since it's such a highly popular SUV. Maybe the EV version will be even better. So that could be it. Kia at 17, and I got finally some info for Porsche. You got 3 units, and then Rolls-Royce. So Rolls-Royce had 1 unit, and of course everyone's going to be like, wait, what is that? So that is the Rolls-Royce Spectre. I think I covered it a couple months ago. I think it's Spectre, whatever the hell it is. But that's 1 unit. I think total has done maybe about 5 or 6 units across the country. And very surprising is I've not seen it yet on the streets of Bombay because there is a very, very big person in Bombay that loves Rolls Royces and Bentleys, and I'm really surprised I've not seen it yet. I'm sure they must have taken delivery, but it's still under wraps. So we'll have to wait and see before they actually bring that car out on the road. But yeah, that's kind of a wrap for, the sales for September 2024. All right, so next up is the news. We've got really 2 big things. One is the launch of the JSW MG Windsor, and then second is the new EV policy from the government. So this is an extension of the FAME. They've given it a new name, but it's going to talk about more about public transportation, so we'll get to that. But like I said, the first thing is the new MG Windsor. As you can see here, it looks pretty good. This is being launched in India, and this is the 3rd MG car That's an EV in the JSW MG portfolio. The first one was the MG ZS EV, then the Comet, and now the Windsor. So I think the Windsor is the one that's really going to do well because I think it's kind of what people are looking for, something spacious. The price point's great. And then they've introduced a new thing called battery as a service. So I'll briefly talk about it right now. But in the deep dive, I'll talk a little bit more about why that strategy is kind of playing out for MG. So here are some of the stats of the car. It's got about 200 Newton meters of torque. One of the things about this MG though is it's got a very small battery pack. It's around 38 kilowatt hours, which I'm very surprised. I really thought they would come in at around 45 to 50 like the other players, but this is a little bit smaller. My guess is they may offer another version in the future that may be a little bit larger. Then this it talks about the charging standard which is CCS2. Pretty much in India everything is CCS2 minus the 7 or 8 Teslas that are in the country and they've got their own charging standard, but everything else is CCS2. And this talks about the charging. If you had a 50 kilowatt charger, you could charge the whole thing from 0 to 80 in about 55 minutes. So not super fast, but not bad either. So if you've got a charging outlet at home, you've got a charger, even if it's one of these slower ones at 7 kilowatts, you can charge it in 7 hours, which is not bad. So the range, I think they were mentioning around 200 to 250. I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's pretty decent, whatever the range will be, because it's really, I think, more for a city car. So the big thing with this launch is what they're calling battery as a service. So it's a little confusing when they first came out with it because, in fact, I was talking to a friend and he was like, "Oh my God, I heard you have to pay per mileage. That doesn't make sense." And the truth is, if you want to buy this car right out, 100%, you can do it with the battery pack, and you never have to worry about paying anyone for the mileage that you're racking up on the EV. But they've done that because they wanted to kind of separate the car from the battery because the battery is the biggest cost in an EV. So they're able to separate the two. You can actually kind of see, hey, if I'm going to use it very minimally, like let's say 1,500 kilometers a month or less, then maybe you can just do it as a rental service and then pay per usage. But of course, that does have additional costs associated with it. But some people that are trying to really get their overall capex down, this is a great way to kind of convert their capex into an operating expense as they use it. So here are a couple options. You can get it from Bajaj Finance and you can run it 1,500 kilometers and it's 3.5. That's what everybody's been talking about, is the 3.5 kilometer charge. 3.5 rupees per kilometer charge. And then if there's anything additional, the answer is no. Then you've got something from Hero FinCorp where something similar, but then there is per additional that you run. Then you've got these others, and a lot of it it's really based on, I think, your credit rating. So obviously the gold standard would be to go with Bajaj Finance. It's probably the best, but they're also looking for a very premium type customer that has, an impeccable credit rating, and then you would get this. But, let's just talk about if you were to buy this car outright, these are the 3 different levels they've got. So, what we talked about up here is we talked about, this is 10 lakhs. And then, you have to buy the battery as well if you wanted to. So if you were to do that, that's where this one comes in, which is the Windsor Excite. And that is, that's basically the car with the battery. So at around 13.5 lakhs. And then if you bump up another 1 lakh, then you get to 14.5. And then if you bump up another, then you go up to the full, which is 15.5. And in the 15.5, you get things like a panoramic sunroof. You get this nice 9-speaker audio system. So a bunch of other things. You've got, ventilated front seats. So, it does have, but I would say, the differential between the 13.5 and the 15.5, I think for a lot of people really comes down to, do you really want that comfort in the back seat? You want that panel sunroof? All of that. That's really what it comes down to. That's what I feel. But I think overall, it's a great car. People have been asking me, if I want to buy something outside of the Nexon. I would say this is definitely up there. Then there's also the new lower cost BYD Atto. And then they just launched, which I will talk about next month, is BYD just launched their E7 Max, which is their minivan, which is a little bit a bigger version of this. That brings me to minivan. I know they have launched this as they're calling it a CUV because technically it's not an SUV, sports utility vehicle. So they're calling it a crossover utility vehicle. But the truth is these are minivans, but minivans have a very bad rap from a naming perspective. I don't understand why. It's just, it's a big car. It's a minivan. Big deal. Get over it. But of course, they want to kind of change the naming of it from a minivan to a CUV. But let's not kid anyone. This is actually a minivan. So that's the MG Windsor. I'm waiting to actually test drive this because I think this is a really good car that I would definitely recommend if you don't want to get the Tata Nexon. I would say this is the one to get because I've heard the back seat is very spacious, very nice, uh, and overall, I've heard it's really good. Next up is the new EV policy. It's gotten a new name. Now they're calling it the PM E-Drive. So that's the Prime Minister's Electric Drive Revolution and Innovative Vehicle Enhancement. That is a fucking mouthful, but that's what it is. So I think people are just going to call it the next evolution of fame. And a lot of it is, like I said, it's not directly to end consumers that are buying four-wheelers. I think there's a lot of that happening before. This is really around vehicles like e-buses and e-trucks, and really two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So three-wheelers are really big around the logistics place. So I think that's really what they're trying to go after. And so you can kind of see here what they're trying to do. They're trying to give up to 500 crore to deploy e-ambulances, which I think is a great thing. And they've got some other stuff. They've got another 4,400 crore for public transport, state transport vehicles. And this kind of talks a little bit more about it as well. So they're trying to talk about how local buses, they're trying to convert to e-buses, and then they're also trying to do a lot more build out of the fast charging network. That's been one of the biggest issues. People talk about range anxiety. Is there's really not a great charging infrastructure. Because wherever you go, you kind of have to plot it out ahead of time to make sure you don't get stranded anywhere. So that's what they're trying to fix that by saying, we're going to deploy 22,000 fast chargers. So that's also a really good thing. So I think it's a great thing that they're kind of moving this forward with, kind of building out. First was, hey, let's kind of do the consumer side with the four-wheelers. Now this is a little bit more on the charging infrastructure side and trying to get, buses, logistics players and two-wheelers in the game as well, and try to give them incentives to kind of push the agenda further. So that is the new EV policy in India, more to kind of jumpstart, like I said, around the charging infrastructure. That's a wrap for the news of September 2024 for EVs in India. All right, so we are here at EV Car Spotting, and I know we've already seen the press photos of the MG Windsor, but I actually got to see it on the road just a couple of days ago. This is on Nepean Road here in Bombay, and that's what it looked like on the road, and you could actually see it coming, so it's very unique looking from the front, and I knew right away that had to be the Windsor, so I was able to get a snapshot from the rear. I mean, from this angle, it looks really good. I was actually on the road with a friend of mine walking, and he kind of looked at it and said, man, the front looks a little bit unique, meaning it looks a little different, meaning may not be 100% awesome looking, but from this angle, it looks really good. I thought they've done a good job. So yeah, it was kind of nice to kind of see this on the road, but overall, it definitely looks good. And like I said, I'm kind of waiting for a test drive to kind of see how it feels driving it, and then also sitting back in the back seat. And I definitely feel this is a great car for, traveling around in the city. So that is kind of EV car spotting for this month. All right, we are here at the deep dive for September 2024. And this one is going to be about JSW MG's battery as a service. But before we get to that, I keep on mentioning JSW MG. The truth of the matter is, when MG first came to India, it was known as MG. Let me just get a color that we can actually see, and then we can mark it up. So when it came, it was known as MG Motor India Private Limited. Then the Jindal family came in and said, we are going to take a stake in this company, and they own 51%. So what that means is now they have kind of added their initials, JSW, at the very beginning. So I think everywhere you're going to see now, everything's going to really talk about JSW MG, and rightfully so, because they own a majority stake in this new venture. So before, SAIC, the Chinese car company that owns MG, was, I think, 100% owning this venture in India. And then I guess because of different government regulations, MG came in and said, or JSW came in and said, hey, we'll take a stake in it. So that's the reason why I keep on mentioning JSW MG because that is really, I think, the brand position they're trying to go for. I know it's kind of a mouthful, JSW MG. I was hoping they'd come up with a really cool name, but here we are with a bunch of letters, uh, kind of forming an acronym. So anyways, battery as a service. I briefly talked about the different price plans. This is kind of a rehash of it. But the truth is, everyone's asking, why are they doing battery as a service? And my take is a couple of things. I think one is it's something unique in the market that's never been done before. And I think it's a great way of splitting what they call the chassis and the shell from the price of the battery pack, which is the most expensive piece. And I think because of that, now people kind of understand, oh, okay, you can rent the battery out. That's kind of interesting. And like I said, bigger point is it really kind of allows you to move from a capex where you're spending all of your capital up front into more of an opex model where you're operating expenses on a monthly basis. So this could be really good for fleet operators, I would imagine. But someone then mentioned to me that this is not available to fleet operators, so I'm not really sure all the details of who's able to use it or not. And I believe this is only available to the first set of customers. I'm not really sure. So I think it still remains to be seen. It's all very brand new to the market, but I think it's a great way of kind of getting people excited because it really does make sense if you can kind of figure out, the biggest part of an EV, which is a battery pack, and separate that. That's great. And then you never know. At some point, I'm not saying this vehicle, but in the future, let's say 5 years from now, they may come up with a battery swapping option. So you kind of take the entire battery out, replace it, and put in something new. So instead of waiting for 30, 40, 50 minutes, you can hot swap it like in 5 minutes. And then of course you pay per usage. So I think this brings up a lot of new business models, interesting business models, different pricing plans. And I think that's the reason why, because they really wanted to get the pricing at under 10 lakhs, and they did it at 9.99 lakhs. And then of course you pay for your mileage. So I think it's a great idea. And because they launched that with the MG Windsor, they have now also rolled it out to their other MG cars. So that is the Comet and the ZS EV. So now if you look at the Comet, that looks really inexpensive at 5 lakhs, and then the battery rental cost is coming at 2.5 kilometers. Like I said, I've done analysis of my Creta, which is an ICE vehicle, and that comes out to around 13 rupees a kilometer is what I pay. And my EV6 comes in at around, I think, 1.7 rupees a kilometer is what I pay for charging and everything. So that's really good. So these prices are really great, and I think it's only going to benefit the consumer, because then I think it's going to push the entire market down to kind of get better pricing, cheaper pricing. But like I said, I think it's an overall strategy by MG to kind of shake up the market, and I think it's amazing. And so if you look at the pricing before, so this is what the price of the Comet was before, at around 7.5 lakhs up to 10 lakhs depending on the variant. But let's just take the base variant of 7.5 lakhs, and now boom, you're looking at 5 lakhs. So that means obviously the battery cost was around 2.5 lakhs, and now it's converted into a rental cost. So like I said, really, really interesting. How many people take them up on it? I'd love to know. I really hope they can kind of break out the sales at some point, on a monthly basis, or kind of say, this is the outright, this is who've done to the battery as a service option. Let's see. But I think it's really good, and like I said, there's more and more cars coming into the market, and I'm really hoping we can kind of get more and more EVs, because the truth is, as prices of petrol, diesel only go up, the prices of EVs are only dropping. I just saw a report that I'm going to talk about next month, where Goldman Sachs talks about the price of EV batteries dropping by 50%, and I think it's only going to get more and more as we've come up with better technology. It's just like, this reminds me of the computing industry. We all have a phone in our hand that is probably more powerful than any supercomputer was 20 years ago. And that's just been because of sheer competition from AMD, Intel, Qualcomm, all these different guys with making chips, Apple with their chips, their A7, A16 chip, M4 chip, all of those things. So I think the same thing is going to happen in the EV space. And this pricing plan is just the beginning of it for us here in India. And I'm hoping to see more and more like that. And so that's kind of, the reason why I think, JSW went down the path of saying, let's do something innovative. Let's just not launch the MG Windsor. Let's talk about something called battery as a service. And I think they really did knock it out of the park. In fact, I've got two friends that are actively looking at this car. I think one actually put down a booking deposit to get it, and the other one is actually looking at this as his second car for city traffic, because when you look at, he said he was spending close to 40,000 rupees a month in petrol, which I was like, holy shit, that's a lot. And I told him if he gets this, he definitely will drop that by 80% guaranteed, even probably 90%, depending on how well, they're using the battery optimization and not keep on hitting the accelerator, because I hit the accelerator in my car a lot. So that's the reason why I could probably bring down my average cost down to probably 1.3, 1.4 rupees a kilometer, but it's pegged at 1.8, 1.9 for me. So that's a wrap for the deep dive for JSW MG's battery as a service. And that is, in fact, a wrap on the entire episode 22 for Electric Avenue. So I just realized, though, my God, I didn't do the EV index update. It slipped my mind. We will definitely do it from next month. Anyways, the index just came out, so I think give it a couple months for the index to kind of settle. I'm actually waiting for them to include Ola Electric as well, but we'll start doing it from next month. I will kind of show you the EV index and maybe some of the new energy players such as Ola Electric in this index, and also just kind of showing you market summary where things are at. So that's a wrap for episode 22. Till next time, see you next month.
Oh no, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue.